I'm going to be giving you a tour. Most of the building is not public, so you're going to get to see the most beautiful, exciting parts of it. This is the rotunda where the tour starts. So my first question for you is, have you done anything else in Lansing today?
Yes.
Yes. Raise your hand and tell me one thing that you've done so far in Lansing, just so I know where to start the story. What's one thing you've done in Lansing? What's one thing?
We went to the Capitol building.
You went to the Capitol. Did you take the tour of the Capitol?
Yes.
Excellent. So what did you see at the Capitol?
We saw paintings, we saw offices, we saw many different things.
Many different things. Did you see the old Supreme Court courtroom while you were there?
Yes.
Excellent. This should look familiar in here because our building was dedicated in 2002. And when they built it, the Michigan Supreme Court had been hoping for 30 years to get out of their temporary space. So they moved from the Capitol to a building between here and there, and then into this building, and they made it look a lot like the Capitol building. So some of the colors are the same, the round, the rotundas with the black and white floors. And in fact, when the Supreme Court left the Capitol building in 1970, they took a little bit of the furniture, but the paintings and things like that belonged to the Supreme Court came here eventually. Ways you can think about courts are, of course, like if you're a sports official, you have to know what the rule is, see what happens, was a rule broken or not, what should happen as a result. Not only do we talk about it with students that way, but it's also a way that judges sometimes talk about themselves too, as what the judicial branch does. We have this in order to resolve disputes, because people have disagreements about what a law means and what should happen. If you take it to court, it's called a case. In a court case, you always have to have what's called a legal question. So the kind of question that lots of people think about with courts is, was it a crime? Was somebody convicted of a crime? Is somebody guilty of a crime or not? Although there's lots of cases that go through court that don't have anything to do with crimes. Often it has to do with, does one side owe the other side money for some reason? We also have family or personal matters that go through courts. So child custody, child support, adoption. If you know someone who was adopted, they were adopted in court. That's how it gets taken care of officially. And then the question that's actually asked most often in our state courts, because traffic laws are usually in state court. It's a state law that traffic laws are. It's actually like half the court cases that go through our state courts every year. It is a lot. But those are mostly things like if you are driving and you get stopped and the police officer gives you a ticket, you can say, oh yeah, I did that, I'm gonna pay it. Or you can go to court and say, that wasn't what I did. I did not do that. And you can go and talk with a magistrate or a judge about it. Yes?
Do you get like charged more if you like after court or whatever and they find out that you did do it?
Well, typically if they're the more serious types of traffic violations that are crimes, but we have these things called civil infractions. So they're not to the level of crime. So like somebody didn't stop at a stop sign, that would be like a civil infraction typically. And so because it's civil and not criminal, it's more likely than not. So the burden is less. So if you go, it would not, the question is should the person have to pay the ticket or not, usually is what it is. All right, so because there's all kinds of things that go through courts, there are 3 levels. So if you are familiar with the federal court system, trial courts in the federal system, any remember what those are called? Those are where most cases start and stopped in the federal system.
It's like the lowest level.
It's the lowest level. They're called district courts in the federal system.
Each city has one.
Well, that's a state court in each city. In Michigan, we do have district courts. That's actually where most of those traffic cases go through. And those are the busiest courts. Those are our state district courts. So are you guys from, what county are you from?
Wayne.
If you're from Wayne County, 36th District Court is the district court that's in Detroit. And then there's a whole bunch of district courts all over the place because there's lots of people in the Detroit area. And so we have district courts. We also have circuit courts that are trial courts. Probate courts are trial courts. And then there's one for if you're suing the state of Michigan, it's called a court of claims. Those are all trial courts where they would decide the facts.
How do you go about suing the court of Michigan?
How do you sue the
State of Michigan.
The state of Michigan? You'd have to file in the court of claims.
Can I do that?
Uh,
Freshly 18.
if you're 18.
Okay.
if you're 18. You'd have to have a friend of the court if you're not 18. And so you'd have to have an adult do it on your behalf. Okay? So, Court of Appeals. Those are similar to the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals in their function. And then we have our state Supreme Court, which is similar in function. But all those are entirely separate from each other. So cases move through those three levels. And so if you're thinking about this, my example cases is like lots of people have fences and there are laws about where you can put a fence. And adults get really mad about fences. So if you're mad at your neighbor about where the fence is and you can't work it out, you could take that to a trial court. And that would be a court near you. Most cases start and stop at the trial court level. And here's a picture of what a trial court looks like. You've got your this is a very fancy historical courtroom. Not all of them are this fancy, but we have one judge, a witness, a place for a jury, the two sides, and a place for the public. This is a double jury courtroom. Most do not have double juries. That would be if there's
Only like 14 members, right? Or is it 12?
We'll talk about that in the next room. Question.
Will we be able to visit like a court and watch a court case?
There's not right now any court cases going on in our courtrooms in this building. If you wanted to, some other time, you could go and go to a local court and watch what's going on. You don't have to know you have to follow the rules, but you don't have to know what the case is about or anything. You could just go and see what was happening because everything that happens in a courtroom in Michigan is presumed to be public. So you could go and see what's happening. You have a question?
What was like the most fresh court case over here?
The most recent? What happened in January? They only have court cases in the Supreme Court 1 or 2 days per month, and I was not upstairs. I will look that up for you, and I will tell you. You can look online on the website, and you can find out what the court cases are each month. But I can tell you how to do that. But we'll keep moving on because we're still at the trial court level here. So trial court. In that court, they decide the facts. What does the law say about the fence? Is it too tall or not? One side's going to win. The other side's not going to win. The side that did not win has a right to go to the Court of Appeals. And the Court of Appeals will hear their case. And remember that doorway I talked to you about? That's what's behind the doorway. And there are 3 judges that hear those cases. They hear them in a panel. There's no more jury, there's no witnesses, and they're looking back at what happened before. Did they follow the law? Did they follow the rules? What happened? Were there any errors? If the errors are big enough, should it start over again? Yes.
Those judges both like 2 agree, 1 disagrees.
Yep, as long as you get 2 judges to agree, so you
Has
can.
there ever been like a neutral one, a judge that doesn't agree?
They can't. They have to make a decision. That's their job.
Can they take as long as they want to make that decision?
The Court of Appeals tends to try to get them out within a month. The Supreme Court has a rule for themselves that they have to get it done within the session. So anything that's heard from October through May has to be decided by July 31st at 11:59 p.m. So they do have rules about how fast they're supposed to get court cases done. You have a question?
I was asking, is this after the retrial? Let's say if they want to do a retrial?
That would be one of the questions. Were there mistakes? Should it go back to the trial court and do over again? But you have a right to an appeal, so that's not always what the answer is. But they could decide that, this was not fair at all. They should start over again. All right? So cases can stop the Court of Appeals, but one side's still going to win and one side's not going to win. And the side that doesn't win can go to the Supreme Court. And there are 7 justices. We're going to go upstairs, and so you get to see what that courtroom looks like. But they only hear the most difficult cases. So did you hear about granting certiorari or granting cert at the U.S. Supreme Court?
Yeah.
Does that sound familiar at all? They decide which cases they're going to take, right? They don't take everything that people ask. Happens the same way in the Michigan Supreme Court. And they have a rule for themselves. It has to be important to the public. So things going forward, there's going to be cases that are going to be similar in the future that they need to know how to decide. And it has to be important to courts. Courts across the state of Michigan are confused about what they should do about it. So it has to be both of those things for the Supreme Court to say yes. So in our fence case, there's lots of people who have fences. So they could say, yeah, we're going to listen to this case about a fence because lots of people have fences. Or they could say no because it's pretty clear what the trial court should be deciding. So here's my statistics for all you math people out there. each year in the state of Michigan, about 3 million court cases. Almost all of them you can see are taken care of at that trial court level at the bottom. Only about 5,000 to 5,500 go to the Court of Appeals, and about 2,000 cases are appealed to the Michigan Supreme Court, but less than 100, you can see less than 100 end up in the Supreme Court courtroom. That will go up to you at the end of your tour. So, with the Supreme Court of Michigan, all those lower courts in Michigan have to follow precedent. So just like the United States Supreme Court sets precedent for the courts below it, the Michigan Supreme Court sets precedent. And the whole idea of precedent is everybody knows what the answer should be and how to get there, so people know what to expect under law. So here's the important 3 points. Here's my summary. Judicial branch of government. What's its power? Everybody can say it. It interprets the law. And there are 3 levels of courts: trial courts, Court of Appeals, and Supreme Court, similar but entirely separate from federal courts. And each level has a different job to do. The trial courts decide the facts, Court of Appeals looks for errors, or I put on here mistakes, and then the Supreme Court makes final decisions.
So the Supreme Court can also do both of the things that the bottom courts do? Like, can they decide facts as well, or no?
The facts are already decided in the lower court by the time it gets to the Supreme Court. So if they need more facts, they would remand it, send it back to the trial court. They can't take new facts. So they presume that the facts have been decided correctly. Any other questions? Okay, what we're gonna do next is we're gonna go into the next room, and it looks like a trial court courtroom. There are some dots on the floor. We're gonna have you sort of spread around, but you gotta sort of stay where the dots are, because we're gonna talk about what's in that courtroom, and there I wanna make sure there's space for everybody. So let me get ahead of you. Oh, I forgot. I promised I would talk about Lady Justice. We're gonna talk about Lady Justice. Have a seat, but you can from all over the world that see Lady Justice when they come in, and she's used as a symbol for courts internationally. Around the world, most places recognize the balance, the scales, like weighing both sides, bringing balance back into the society through our court decisions. But those are symbols that are used for courts. Many countries, especially those that have roots in Europe, we follow the English common law system. So we have Lady Justice here. She's representing justice, and you can see she has a sword. I always tell the youngest students that come and visit me, we don't ever really use a sword in our courts, but the idea is cutting to the heart of the matter. Court cases can be really quite difficult, and figuring out what's the important parts and what aren't. The other thing is that it shows she has authority. The Constitution gives courts the authority to interpret the law and make certain types of decisions. So you have her there. But the idea is that she is a symbol when you see her. She is the idea that courts are supposed to be fair according to the law. Any questions? Yes?
So the sword is not a symbol of punishment, or?
It can be. That's one of the things that they can decide. But we wouldn't use a sword, especially since in Michigan, under our state constitution, we do not have capital punishment like the death penalty. Capital punishment is the life without parole in Michigan.
Why do we not have that?
Because when they had the Constitutional Convention in 1961-62, the delegates decided to write a section into the Constitution that says that that the death penalty is against the Constitution. We actually, one of the things I heard on the news yesterday, but I know that every 16 years, Michigan in its state constitution has a place that talks about every 16 years we get to vote on whether we want to have a new constitutional convention. Those of you who are old enough and are voters will get to, in November, decide whether we should have a new constitutional convention and throw out our old state constitution and start over again. So you could think about all of those things. Other questions? Yes? Yep.
Oh.
You. Yep.
If the legislators decided that the death penalty was against the Constitution, how come other states also?
Well, it wasn't the legislature that decided against the Constitution. It was the delegates to the Constitutional Convention, which I'm making that point because in order to be a delegate to the Constitutional Convention, you could not be a legislator. You were voted in, but you couldn't be a legislator at the same time. And they decided that other states, because it is allowed under the United States Constitution, other states do have the death penalty. Constitutions offer more protections than the US Constitution. When you're a state constitution, you get to offer more protections, but not fewer protections. So the prohibition against the death penalty in Michigan is that offering more protection and not less. Any other questions? You guys got some great questions. All right, so I promised we would go into the next room. It looks like a trial court courtroom. We're going to talk a little bit more in there. Sort of find yourself near a dot. There's different roles to play, so be ready if you think you know what the role is, what they would use to make real decisions. But we're going to talk about some of the roles you can have, and I'm going to offer you some help. But you're going to help your friends learn about the trial courts. So, you guys over here, you're part of the public. And as I mentioned in here, somebody asked if you could go and see what happens in a courtroom. You can, whether it's the trial court or the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court, you could be in the courtroom when things are happening. But you have to follow the rules. And so what do you get to do? You got two verbs. What are the two things you can do? You can see and listen. So you don't get to talk, you don't get to make decisions, but the public is so important that it's written into our United States Constitution and our state constitution. You have a right to a public and speedy trial. Courts want to not only do what's fair according to the law and the rules, they want to make sure other people can see that it's fair. The other thing that you might want to go and see what's happening in a courtroom is, does anybody know how you get to be a judge for the state of Michigan? Anybody know how you get there? You got to be a lawyer first. What else do you have to do? You get elected. So if you're somebody who's a voter, you could go in the courtroom and watch your current judge and say, oh, I think want to vote for that person so they have 6 more years, or if they're a Supreme Court justice, 8 more years. Or you could say, no, I think I might check into the other candidate who's running for judge. So that's another reason to go. We also have here, where did my judges roll? Who's my judge here? I gotta have a judge. First we had too many. All right, so you're my judge. What's your last name? Rights. Judge Rights. Judge Rights, what grade are you in?
12.
Judge Rights graduated from high school, graduated from 4 years of college, graduated from 3 years of law school, took a big test called the bar exam. You were elected, and you can tell us what your role is. You can just read it or tell me in your own words.
Well, basically, I work for the judicial branch. I hate English. I work for the judicial branch of government, and we interpret the law and make court cases.
In court
Judges
cases.
interpret the law, and in court cases, they make decisions about what the law means.
So you're the one that makes decisions about the law in the courtroom. All right, so we have our defense attorneys, and we're gonna pretend, wrong, you're the defense attorney, you're the plaintiff's attorney, and we're gonna pretend that this is the fence case, and you're defending Mr. Wall has the big fence, Ms. Measure hates the fence and wants it to go away. So how would you start your court case? Plaintiff would be for Ms. Measure who wants the wall, wants it gone, and you get to start. Nice strong voice. Just read what it says.
Do I get up?
Yes, you don't stay right there. You can't wander about. You got to stay right there.
Your Honor, I am here for Miss Measures.
Keep going.
She wants Mr. Wall to take down the fence. She thinks it is taller than the laws allow.
Okay, so just like our judge, you went to law school. You learned how to read laws and think about what they mean and how you can argue your case. You found a way that the law says that the fence is too tall. Now you're going to represent Mr. Wall.
The fence. He thinks his fence follows the law. It is not too tall.
All right, so you went to law school just like the other two, and you figured out a way that you can have the law say that the fence is not too tall. All right. Now, in order to get information in here so we can have a decision, we have our witness, and our witness. Are you guys in the jury pool here? Well, we have our witness. Our witness would have to. It'll stop. You have to just not touch it. Nope, you don't. That would not be you. That would be the attorneys that get you a job. You would have to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Right hand to God, that I am telling the full, honest, and impartial truth.
All right, so you have to swear to that, and then you can tell us what you would do.
I am here to tell the truth about what I saw or heard. I work for local government. I make sure fences follow the law in our city.
I object.
You object. Oh my goodness. Now you can't object to what the witness says. You can object to what the other attorney says. And do you know who gets to decide whether to sustain it or not? It would be the judge who decides whether it gets sustained or not. All right? All right. Last thing here, we have our jury. Our jury. What is your job? Well, if it's a criminal case, so what do you get to do? You decide the facts. So the judge decides the law, and our judge here would tell our jury what they need to decide and what the law means. You would look at what the witness says and listen to what the witness says, and you would get together and decide if it's a criminal case beyond a reasonable doubt whether somebody committed the crime or not. The judge would give you instructions. If it's a civil case like our fence, you would be the ones that would get to decide whether Mr. Wall gets to keep his fence or not according to the law. All right? So anybody know how you get to be on a jury? Have you learned about that? How do you get to be on a jury in the state of Michigan? All right, yes. They send you a letter. It's called a jury summons. Don't ignore your jury summons, especially those of you who are 18. If you're 18 and you have a state ID or a driver's license, they get the original list from the Secretary of State's office. So if you have a state ID or a driver's license, you potentially could be there. It's picked randomly. They send it to the jury board, and then you would get a jury summons. And you would have to answer questions. Are you a U.S. citizen? Can you communicate in English? Are you physically and mentally able? Do you have a felony on your record? And what's the last thing? There's 5 things. That's another question that they will ask you. Are you related? Related to the defendant. That usually is once you get to the court and they have jury selection when they would ask that, because they ask some general questions on the jury summons. So if you are 18 and you get one of those and you're still in school, there is a state law where you have to contact the court, but then they have to put it at a time when you are on school vacation, so it doesn't interrupt your schooling. So you get that. You would come into court. Have any of our adults in here ever served on a jury? Gotten picked for a jury? So for our parents, okay. So did you get selected for a jury? You were dismissed. Okay. So you get called. There's a big pool. They sometimes, like, I've only gotten called a couple of times, but my jury services have been on calling on the phone and they didn't need my number. I was super disappointed because I talk about serving on a jury all the time. The next thing that would happen, if they call your number, you would come in, they would ask you questions. They select the people who they think are going to be most fair. And then you have to listen to the evidence, listen to what the judge says, and then once the case has been rested, they go and decide. If it's a criminal case, anybody know how many have to agree with the criminal case to find somebody guilty? It has to be unanimous. So if it's a felony, a serious case, it has to be at least 12. If it's a less serious case, a misdemeanor, it's at least 6. If it's a civil case, which is typically about money, it's not unanimous. It's either 4 of 6 or 5 of 6, because what's more important, your liberty, possibly going to jail or prison, or your money. So if it's with a criminal case, your liberty is at stake. Question?
Don't you get in trouble if you don't go to your jury?
It's considered contempt of court if you don't go when you're supposed to, so you want to go. Contempt of court is that you made the court really mad and there's a fine in jail. So if you don't go, usually what happens first is they would have what's called a show cause hearing, and you have to go and talk to the judge about why you didn't come in the first place, and then they would give you another date. But really, it could be a contempt of court if you don't show. But our court system in the United States runs on needing juries, and so they know that they're asking a lot of people. Yes?
So when you get chosen, it's mainly mandatory, right?
If you get yes, you have to go if you get chosen. So you have to respond. You can't just ignore it. Yes?
For
pretty sure, I'm not looking at the exact rules, I'm pretty sure if it's like a really big case, that they get to basically hide the jury from the media.
Well, there's all kinds of rules about who could, like, there's rules about protecting the jury. And so some of the things that happen are like, you can't, during jury selection, you can't have a phone with taking pictures because they don't want to have pictures in the courtroom that potentially could show who the witness or the jurors are and things like that. So they do protect the jury. Mahogany here, it's walnut in the capital, and it's meant to look a bit like the casework that's behind that there. But you can see that all 7 justices hear every case. And then here's my question for you. When you're in school, do you sit where your teachers decide, or do you get to decide? It depends on the teacher. Do you have lockers in your school? Yes. You gotta put that away. Do you write essays? Yes. All right. Do you read a lot? If you like all of those things, think about becoming a Supreme Court justice someday. You have to go to law school for 5 years, just like any other type of judge in Michigan. But you can see all 7 justices are sitting by their name tags. Once a week, they have what's called conference. They have a meeting where they have to sit in the right order, even though they're behind closed doors, and it's working before they become Supreme Court justices. Yes.
Richard H. Bernstein Foundation.
His family has the Bernstein Law Firm. He was a member of that, but once you become a judge, you can't be part of a law practice. So he's no longer part of the law practice, but he's still part of the family. So, and there are rules about when you become a judge that you can't hear cases before, like if the case, the person representing it is your family member, you wouldn't be able to hear the case. So like Justice Kavanaugh, before she became a justice of the Supreme Court, she was an appellate and attorney, and her dad was a justice on the Supreme Court, so he couldn't hear those cases. Yes?
What's appellate?
Appellee. They're the 2 sides. You remember downstairs in our pretend courtroom, they are the plaintiff and the defendant. The 2 sides are called something different here. They're called the appellant and the appellee. You might guess that it's related to the word appeal. The appellant is the side that lost at the Court of Appeals. If you think of the triangle, you got trial court, Court of Appeals, Supreme Court. The appellant wants a new answer, so they're bringing the case. They would get to go first, and their attorney would say something very formal. It's like a formal conversation. When they start their case, they would say, "May it please the court, my name is, I represent. My client thinks the Court of Appeals was incorrect for this reason, and this reason, and this is what should happen instead." They'd, of course, be facing the court and not you, but they save out some time. They don't get extra time, but they can try and save some time from what they've been given. So many questions, they don't get to have their extra time or their time at the end. Other questions? Yes?
How likely is it for the person who's against the court time?
Start it again, I didn't understand.
How likely is it for the person who's against the court time? Like who's saying that they're...
Any of the court cases that the Supreme Court decides to hear in the courtroom could be decided either way. Because they have, remember there were like 2,000 cases that people ask, please hear our case. In 90% of them, they're like, no. We like the Court of Appeals decision, it's gonna stand. In about 10% of cases, the court will be like, we can decide this by order, or we need to make a decision in some other way. And so usually by the time that it gets here, you can legitimately argue either side of the case. That's happened. An example, any type of case that can be heard by the lower courts, unless someone's given up their right to appeal, can be heard by the court. So criminal cases, civil cases, so like insurance cases. There's when they changed the when they changed the marijuana laws, there's been a lot of marijuana cases. There's been medical malpractice, tax cases, family law cases, so related to divorce, related to probate, so like wills, estates, and trusts. and those cases, someone was asking about cases against the state of Michigan. They're gonna, in March, if you've heard about the Enbridge case, that's one of them that's on. They actually have 3 cases on the docket for the Enbridge cases. I'm trying to think what else is on. I looked at March not that long ago. I should know more than that, but those are the ones I remember. So all kinds of cases, yes. I'm sorry?
When was the last case last week?
Last heard in here in the courtroom was January 21 was the last time they heard cases. So lots of people think about trial courts. Trial court judges are in their courtroom like every day of the week. They have lots of cases, a short amount of time for each case. Appellate courts run differently. It's fewer cases, but a lot of time for each because they've been decided already at least once, if not twice, by the time it gets to the Supreme Court. And so they're really looking into all the issues and they have to think about it and they have to write really long opinions and things like an opinion by the Michigan Supreme Court can be like 100 pages. And all 7 are working together. So you gotta, it's like doing a group project with 6 other people all the time. So it takes a lot longer. Yes? Well, usually when they're that long, it means it's not a unanimous decision. So the justices, when they decide, they can all decide with the majority and one person will write it. Although they get lots of input from other people on, can you change this? And I'll sign on things. You can also have a concurrence where they say, I agree with what your answer is in the case, but I think this part, I would do it differently, or I think you need to expand on this part, and they'll write a concurrence. Then there's also the idea of dissent, and dissent is when I don't agree with what your answer is, and I don't agree with how you got there. So you can have the majority opinion, and that's what counts, but then you have all these other people who are writing. So if they all write, 40 or 50 pages, it adds up after a while. But yeah, they do a lot of reading and writing. I'm sorry? Denying the case. 90% of they deny the case and they don't even get to writing a decision. After that, they don't count it that way. So I can't give you an answer. They do keep statistics, but that's not how they count it. Did I see another hand? It's like 1:30 and I know you need to be on your way. No, okay. So you do have a question? Last question. I'll let you have the last word.
I was just gonna ask, how much is the salary?
What's the salary of a justice? It's set by a committee of the legislature, and it used to be really easy for me to remember because they didn't get a raise in 20 years. And then they got a raise recently within the last 5 years. And so it's like $180-something thousand per year. But the thing is that because they were worried attorneys can make a lot of money.